You are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika with our returning guest, author and fairy witch, Daniela Simina, and me, your host, Vicky Benison. Daniela is also a yoga instructor, a speaker, and teaches various classes on esoteric subjects, including fairies. But she has a special interest in European fairy traditions and folklore. And it's that special interest, that passion that she brings to her writing, which ignites a similar interest in us all. We've discussed her works, A Fairy Pathway, cue Daniela to hold it up, A Fairy Pathway, a memoir of Young Fairy Seer in training, and Pagan Portals, Where Fairies Meet, both by Moon Books Publishing. But today we're going to focus on the very hands-on fairy herbs for fairy magic. So if you're interested in fairy gardens, contacting fairies, what herbs and trees they're attracted to, stick around, folks. We have a lot of info for you. Congratulations, Daniela, on the new book. And thank you for your passion and perspective while writing and speaking about fairies. Welcome back to Fika.
Thank you so much for inviting me back into this magical space that you have created, where always sharing about my work, what is my passion actually, is always a privilege and a joy. So thank you. And thank you very much to our lovely audience from whom I'm very eager to hear and see what questions they might have for us today.
Well, gee, you're so congenial this afternoon.
Learning from the best.
She's been working on it. And Robin says, good morning. It's good morning where he is, Vicky and Daniela. And good morning to you, Robin. So Daniela,
good morning.
The people who haven't had the pleasure, I'm saying pleasure, of listening to you here or watching you here before, and they haven't read Fairy Path, can you tell us a little bit about what started you on this pathway?
In case that was a cue, here is Fairy Path that we're talking about, and that is autobiographical work, so that's not fiction. And it actually talks about what got me into this working with fairy. So I grew up in Romania, and my grandmother was a fairy seer and a practitioner of folk medicine. Notice that I deliberately don't use the term witch when I talk about her, because back then in the culture, and unfortunately for many people even today, the word witch is Latin, and not everybody feels comfortable about it. I do. I'm a fairy witch. So, growing up with her, alongside her, that gave me the opportunity to see this practicing of fairy witchcraft from within. So not from stories that I heard from other people, not from, reading in books. I was too little to read books, actually, this kind of books back then. But seeing it and living it and having my own experiences, which at first I didn't know what exactly were and what would cause such experiences. And then going to grandmother to try to clarify who's who and which is what. And that is when I began to learn that fairies in Romanian culture, and as I found out later on in other European cultures as well, are not this always benevolent, always quaint beings. And so relationships between human and denizens of fairy is quite complex. well, much as relationships between human interacting, I guess, as well, they can be very complex with different kinds of outcome. So this is my starting point into this fairy business. And then growing up, I wanted to know more. I was very curious whether folklore of other cultures resemble or is different, and in which way resembles and is different from the Romanian tradition. And I was very much surprised and pleasantly surprised finding that other people have interests similar to my own. And it was amazing to get together in the years to come and more recent times, get together with these people in person and compare notes and have the ooh, oh, wow, in seeing how much is similar across cultures in terms of fairy lore and folklore. So here I am today teaching all kind of classes related to fairies and the sort of shenanigans and yoga, and yes.
So you really lived it with your
Yes.
grandmother
Mm-hmm.
from birth, and
Yes.
I strongly suggest a fairy path because you've had some close calls. There were other things involved. It's a riveting story. It is not a fluff story. It is a riveting story. It involves politics, years, and just everything.
I didn't want to spoil it, but yes, growing up in Romania at the time when I did grow up, we were in during the communist regime, and the grip was tightening in the term of freedom of speech and how much people can say, but particularly about what people could believe, because there was this strictly materialistic take on things where anything spiritual was denied and later on prohibited. So to perpetuate, for my grandmother to perpetuate and continue to practice, and for me to learn, she was very willing to teach me. And I was so nosy that it was hard for her to keep anything away from me. But that was going against the fact that overall everything had to be kept in secret, which is hard to keep anything secret when you have a 7, 8, 9 years old at your heels all the time. So it's all that. And what does it mean to practice in secret? And what does it mean to actually have run-ins with the security, with the services? And how powerful magic is applied to everyday life and circumstances. So in reading this book, I was writing it and I was trying to also kind of be a little bit external so I wouldn't get very emotional, because believe me, I got more than once very emotional when reviewing.
I can believe it.
When review parts of that book. And while writing and trying to stay somehow detached, I was like, wow, but reality beats fantasy by a long shot.
I always say that. Reality is better than fiction in a lot of cases.
In a lot of cases, yes.
Yes. And you're okay. You're okay to get emotional about that book, because I got emotional about that book and I didn't even live it. So you're a very strong person, Daniela.
Thank you.
You were mentioning that the government denied and later prohibited fairy faith. And now, a lot of people say, what is happening today? There's so many people who are now interested in connecting with fairies and learning about fairies and what's this new thing? And you're saying it's not a new thing. It's just that it's always been there, hidden, under the holly bush, if you would like. Hidden. Because of the history we have of squishing these things, whether it was witch trials or public opinion or the government. It's just now that people are feeling safer and stronger too.
Mm-hmm. So there are so many layers to the question. So why is this very, very old and ongoing phenomena appear as such a new thing, as if only happening now? It's not only happening now. It's been happening all along. But there is a but here. Speaking of governments, depending on what the general government policy is, whether it's a very strict materialistic one and then banishes, they try to really take a hold on what people think. So you no longer have private thoughts. Your thoughts and your beliefs have to be aligned to the doctrine, the political doctrine of the dominant political party. So whether it's religious based, where you have an autocracy, that's like a religious based type of government, where everything that's not aligning with their take on things and view of spirituality, it's sinful and it's banished and it gets you burned at stake. So that was the case
fined.
Yes. So yes. So all of the above. So, and then there is another factor, that of making people from the countryside, and in case of colonization, those from indigenous culture, making them look retrograde, antiquate, backwards, infantile, you name it. So just to show that those people are less. And when you're, for example, in the situation that you lived your life for most part in the countryside, but you decide for economical reasons, for the future of your kids, to move to the city, then all of a sudden you come against this, it's a cultural clash. And you realize that if you keep talking about your beliefs the way they were back then in your native village, you're being awkward, you're being infantile. And we owe a debt of ingratitude to the Victorians and the Victorian era and the Theosophical movement that created this, popularized this image of fairies as connected to children and relegating them to children's books, or presenting them as these, they're either part of a realm of fantasy, things that don't exist, but we use them for moralizing stories that we tell children, or they are completely powerless and the human mind has a say in how they appear and how they present themselves. So due to those, we ended up starting about, I don't know, maybe 200 years ago or less, and the Industrial Revolution and all that. So moving onward, we have this idea that whoever talks about fairies, whoever believes in fairies, is not smart and is easily deluded and believes in the tricks that their minds might be playing on them, or actually,
or they drink too much on Friday night.
Or they drink too much on Friday night, or so they're not taken seriously. And if this is the case, which this is the case in an awful lot of places, then what is your incentive as one who lived within the culture to go out there and start talking about your fairy encounters? Because you may end up in a medical ward and under psychiatric treatment, although you may not be suffering from any kind of mental illness. And full disclosure here, I do believe that there are situations when hallucinations are signs and symptoms of a medical condition, and that should be addressed as such. But this is not what we're covering here. We're covering here fairy lore and fairy traditions, which involve
indigenous belief systems.
Yes, indigenous belief systems and things that really did happen. People had an experience, direct experience with these things. So it's more of a decision, like being cautious about what you speak, to whom do you speak. It may cost your job, it may cost your life, you may not be secure in your neighborhood. So it's a number of reasons for which people prefer not. And this created the impression that actually contact ceased, when it's not true. It still happened, but people either choose to look the other way or choose not to talk about it. So my take on it.
You said an interesting thing, because about moving into the industrialized cities. I grew up in a rural area, and then having grown and looked back at many of the customs we had, even though they weren't called folk customs or whatever, they really were. You know, you
Mhm.
have your harvest festival and you have your this and your that. So with industrialization, that lack of nurturing, that go to work, and I mean, it was a okay, never mind. I'll get carried away. I did this
I
week.
hear
I
you.
don't want to get politically carried away again, but
I hear you.
you know, go to work at 9, get off at 4. You're not, these other things take your mind in the direction of thinking and possibilities and all of this. And we can't have that if we're going to keep people in factories.
Yep. So while I believe in being industrious and living a life full of purpose and find joy in the work that you're doing, I strongly believe that needs to go hand in hand with being also spiritually active, for lack of a better term. And by spiritually, I don't mean religious. Some people are very spiritual without having any contingency with any kind of religion, but seeing spirit, living in a world that is animated as opposed to populated with inanimated objects, and seeing consciousness wherever you turn your eyes, seeing consciousness in trees and in crystals and in everything that surrounds you, and acknowledging consciousness in animals and in birds and in all forms of life, personhood, not just human personhood. So holding an animistic perspective, that's very spiritual, and you can cultivate an animistic perspective, worldview, from wherever you are, whether you are in your office and just look outside the window and you just take in the beauty of a, I don't know, bright spring morning or fall evening, whatever it is. Just allow your senses to feed you. Don't become opaque and only concerned with the material, with the, I mean, finances are important, let's face it. If I want to attend retreats and purchase books and have access to more information and education that then helps me build further and develop my courses, I need money. I need money to participate in all those. But on the other hand, if I just have the money and deprive myself of that spiritual food, money
What's
alone,
the point?
what's the point? So there has to be a balance, and I think that's the balance that we're missing. And this is one of the reasons where I see the connection, for which I see the connection with fairy and fairy world, and the idea of fairy as being very important for us today.
And so we're going to get into the contacting and things, but before we do that, I would just like to do a Fika with Vicky public service announcements. As you will read in Daniela's books, and we've read in other people's books that have visited here before, oh, excuse me, before you try, they don't want me to warn you. Before you
What?
start contacting fairies, working with fairies, trying to get close to fairies, you need to check your character. They have a no tolerance policy on being unkind, on being rude, being ungrateful, not living up to your responsibilities and promises. Just be a good person. Otherwise, you know, you'll find out what's going to happen.
It's better if you don't get to the point, finding out. So
Yes.
I've learned it the hard way, so I'm talking from lived experience. I mean,
And
yes.
you can hear more about that if you read A
Yeah.
Fairy.
You hear plenty about that. I mean, running from your own mistakes.
Daniela spent years.
Yeah, I spent years just learning from my own mistakes.
But you learned a lot, and that's what's important. And
I
she's
did.
still here. Okay, she's still here.
Yes,
I
I'm still
mean,
here. Miraculously, sometimes like, wow, I'm still here. So, yeah, thank
some of
you.
those stories
Depth of
I read,
gratitude. Yep.
I was surprised that you're still here. Now you call
Hmm.
in the book you call the relationship between a human and a fairy a partnership, or we can be allies
Hmm.
or whatever, working together. We're working together. These aren't like little winged buildings. These aren't like little
Hmm.
winged beings. These are actually other world beings that we can work together and create something with.
Mm-hmm.
So in doing that, you say that there are several ways that fairies can be contacted. But after the warning that I just gave, should we even be trying? Should we wait till we have a feeling they're trying to contact us? Like, is this a safe thing to do?
All of the above. So I answer all of the above. So now let me elaborate a little bit on that answer. So first, I will not deny that there are little winged fairies, smaller in size and looking like pretty. But the fact that I didn't encounter any of them, it doesn't mean they don't exist.
Right.
Fairy is an umbrella term that shelters a very, very large population of made up of different groups, all of them that can be brought to the common denominator labeled as fairies. But within this label, there are many, many, many types of fairies. So I do not deny that there are very small, medium-sized fairies who look exactly like humans, especially if you look into the Irish and into Scandinavian folklore. Sometimes it takes a while to the human involved to realize that they're actually interacting with a fairy. And this kind of hints already at the idea of possible partnerships that's we're trying to address in the question. So they have been here for far before, for much longer than humans have been along, because they also have unfathomable long lifespans, fairies. And they carry a lot of knowledge. Some of it acquired magically, I would say, and some other acquired through growing alongside human society. I really, really, really like the way Morgan Daimler described the world of fairy. Again, the world of fairy, like a very general umbrella term, a world made of many patches that represent like fairy countries on a fairy continent. So I like Morgan's description that if we think of our world and that of fairy as a sheet of paper, you can write on both sides, and that would be something written to represent our world, something written to represent their world. If there is water dripping on one side of the paper, it will go onto the other side as well. So our worlds are not separate. Now, bringing all these pieces together, fairies being around for a very long time and having witnessed humans evolving and also learning from humans in the process of humans growing and developing all sorts of technology, they have knowledge that for us is being lost, considering that we are moving further and further away from the past. We have questions and ability to develop things that they don't know yet. So there is always this exchange, possibility for exchange of information. What am I basing this affirmation on? There is a lot of Irish lore and Scandinavian lore describing fairies asking for various tools from humans, or fairies that use tools that are similar to humans, like plowing or tools to dig or mills to grind salt or flour or other things, and these tools breaking, and then they go to humans to have these tools fixed. And then, of course, if the human is nice and help the fairy fix the tools, then there is a partnership, and they learn there's always something to be exchanged, so each of us can contribute to the relationship. So I see it very much as a symbiosis.
Well, as the more popular fairy tales, which is where a lot of this lore was hidden, the shoemaker and the elves, right? And that kind of thing. The shoemaker and the elves would be a partnership. Yep. Sora would like to know if we are, she's just joining us, if we're talking about metaphysical life, angels and fairies.
I think that we can touch on the metaphysical. I can give like a nugget here, because that would take like a whole episode of its own.
You can come back.
I would love to, anytime. See you tomorrow. Okay, maybe tomorrow is soon, but yeah, back anytime. So we have a lot of stories and a lot of lore and folklore mentioning that in the afterlife, some people go into fairy and become assimilated into the fairy population themselves. And we also know of people being kidnapped, children or young adults or very talented musicians, for example, being kidnapped, taken into fairy, and then relatives, family, friends seeing them and recognizing them as part now of fairies. So there is this crossover. If we talk about other existence or afterlife existence that can lead someone into fairy, but it's not said that every single dead person, and unfortunately I'm seeing more and more this on the internet, oh, all ancestors goes to fairy. No, they don't. You are ignoring, if that's your belief, then you are ignoring that for a Christian person, the respectful way to consider their afterlife is to admit that they go to their choice of heaven. Or if somebody's like Norse heathen, you can go to the halls of some of your gods. So it's not said that you're going to end up into a fairy mound in the afterlife. Maybe, but maybe not. As far as angels, Reverend Kirk, he mentions, so it's the 17th century, and he mentions fairies as a betwixt between man and angels, so kind of an in-between. So just read the Secret World of Fauns and Fairies by Reverend Kirk, because that's a lot. Brian Walsh, rework, translation, interpretation.
There's two different strands of the origin story, right? So we have the Christian strand and we have the pagan or indigenous strand.
Exactly. Yes.
And that is, I'm not being facetious here, but just as you were talking about them calling on musicians and things, I was thinking maybe that's why there was so many visits from Elvis after his death.
Oh,
we kept having Elvis sightings. We don't know.
Absolutely. I mean, why not? So no, the afterlife in itself is a really complicated matter, and it depends what your beliefs are, your personal beliefs, how much you're willing to look into and accept that other people may have other views that are equally valid. So I believe all views are valid, honestly. So it's just about how we piece the puzzle together. And no, from the Christian lore, the Scottish lore, which is Protestant, we have these stories as fairies being fallen angel, not morally fallen, literally falling from heavens during the arguments between God
Lucifer
and Lucifer. So taking different sides and being cast out. And then Scandinavian lore has its own way of interpreting fairies that's not connected to angels. Is what makes the fairies the hoodoo folk, the hidden folk. So
well, and I appreciate your perspective, because this is what Fika is all about. We can't understand each other until we understand each other's stories. And that's why we try to get to the origin of them, to see where we are, as in, Where Fairies Meet, the parallels between different cultures and different religions, to find that space. Okay. So you're saying go ahead and contact the fairies. Just be careful about it. Or they will.
I have several thoughts about it. So first of all, let's say that you're caught in this stream of events where a lot of people are writing about fairies. They are making their own experiences known to a larger public. They're talking about traditions that they have grown up with. Here I am. So, and this may give the impression of, yeah, sure, come on, everybody, let's go contact fairies. And my piece of advice on this would be, before you're jumping into doing such a thing, so let me backtrack a little. This may be a genuine call. There might be pointers in your life that really you should be doing this. It should be part of your spiritual life, honoring fairies. And I will tell the difference in between just honoring, like respecting them, and actually engaging in active partnerships, because there's a difference. So that might be in one way or another part of your spiritual life. But before engaging, taking any step in that direction, just ask yourself, why? Why do I want to do this? Is this just pure curiosity? Is it because it's cool and these people who are doing it, all the other kids are doing it and I want to do it too? So ask ask yourself and be honest about the motivations that push you there, because fairy contracts it's a pretty contractual situation. So, and if you end up making promises that you don't keep, there's going to be a retribution for that. I can tell you, there's going to be like their retribution for that, consequences. So only make promises that you can keep. Try exploratory type of relationships, like for 3 months, I'm really curious of exploring a relationship with X type of fairy or fairy queen, or I want to know what fairy beings are in my surroundings. And at that point, considering that you're willing to enter this relationship respectfully and with full awareness that you're dealing with people, okay, not just figments of imagination. So you start putting out offerings. For this, this implies research and reading. What is local to your area? What are the customs to your area? How do you balance this curiosity or this call that you feel versus not impinging onto indigenous people's belief and act in appropriative ways? Where I live, there is Cherokee territory. So my question was toward one of the native peoples, like I'm not interested in working with any of the fairy beings, because there are fairy beings, fairy-like beings in the Cherokee culture as well. And my interest is not, and my call is not that of interacting and building relationship with these beings in your culture, but I want to treat them respectfully. I work in partnership. I'm in partnership with other kind of fairy beings. And by the way, geography is not determining whether fairies from another region can come over. I call my backyard Otherworld International Transit Station, because you mention it, chances are it came through at one time or another. So the beings that I'm most connected with, they're not native of the land. Some of them are not even a native to Romania, they're from elsewhere. Nevertheless, they come through. And I had to find ways, and this is where this came from, because plant and herbalism and making plant offerings and using plants in specific ways, how to use them that I would not upset the native beings, not upset my allies, yet create a space that is protective and will keep away those energies that I don't want to come in. So it's a very complicated situation, and I would suggest do your research. And after doing an exhaustive amount of research, you still feel that you want to work in partnership with fairies and get close to them, then probably you're well equipped to know enough to tackle this situation safely. It's like maybe you care about working with the Irish ASC. Learn everything you need to know, and how is it appropriate to start making offerings to them, let's say in the US or in Canada, or if you live in Australia. So learn how to approach those culture-specific beings, because the ASC are not the general Celtic, they're specific Irish. Norse Alfar, Holdofolk, they're Scandinavian. They're similar but also different from both Romanian fairies and Irish fairies. How do you approach them? What do they like traditionally? And how do you reconcile that with what is available and properly harvested, sustainably harvested, today?
Okay, hold that thought, because I have a thought about our genealogy and ancestors and stuff. I just want to answer Zora here. I believe that she can say if I'm wrong, that fairies are both male, female, gender flowing, to the indigenous, the Irish indigenous, or the native indigenous, or the Romanian indigenous culture, and angels come more from a Christian perspective. Yes?
That's also my belief largely. I would say that we have, angels are also mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, in the Tanakh.
Right.
But
So
it's from that. We also have angels in Islam, in the Islamic view of world. They also have angels there, but it's from that, I would say, Abrahamic religions, which I don't think it's an exclusive, probably, and beings very similar to angels but called by different names are common to other cultures as well. I'm not going to speak about this because it's really not my purview, and kind of this is where my
and I only have so much
knowledge
time.
stops, and we don't have so much time.
So
I wish, yeah, but they're yeah, I totally feel about them like a different, completely different class of beings, and not really so by fairy. I
yeah,
have a completely
but
different vibe.
definitely fairy covers all males, females. It's like
It's
if someone
it's
is German.
it's very important to go to the origin, and again, we cannot cover it now, but there are really good materials that Morgan Daimler, they have on academia a lot of very good material about the origin of the name fairy. And I'll remember his name,
Well, I
Albrecht
think she
Hall.
has a lot in her last book.
Oh, in Fairy and Other World by any other name.
By any other names, which is what, less than $10 ebook.
It's I wrote the preface to that book, so I had the privilege to.
And
So I had the privilege to read it in manuscript form, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I need it. I'm going to pre-order it after. So I really wanted to have the paper copy, to take around with me.
Yeah, the copy, anyways. I mean, that's one of the.
It's amazing. So it's a very, very good book and explains a lot, far more than. So by and large, so we have, if we look into Scandinavian, we have under the umbrella of elves, Alfar, which fell under the umbrella of fairy and fairy-like beings. You have both male and female, and both can mate with humans and have children. And it's even a fluidity in between becoming one of the Alfar or one of the Alfar becoming humanized, turned into a human, regular human being. So there is even that fluidity. So we cannot say this is the female, this is the male equivalent. It's really hard, and it depends a lot on the culture. In Romania, we have like a majority of what we call zâne, fairies, translation. They're mostly female, but we do have men presenting entities who qualify as as fairy, like fairy kings. So in Irish, if we look at where the path, we have fairy kings as well, and some of them hold the dual role as fairy king, fairy monarch, and god. Andagda, this all-powerful, very powerful Irish deity, he's a fairy king, known as fairy king of all fairies in Ireland, as well as a god. He's the Morrigan's husband. So things are very complicated and links tenuous to explore. But I wouldn't say, fairies are female and elves are all male, although there is such an understanding for some people in the Norse religion, heathenry, Asatru, they tend to see it like this. So you have Disir female and Alfar male. So there is that take as well.
Daniela.
Yes.
We gotta move on. Okay.
We gotta move on. Yes, let's just do it.
So have you ever heard, because this goes back, to our roots, have you ever heard of a fairy partnership that passes down generationally? So you are a partner with grandma, and then grandma looks after your mom. I mean, you know what I'm saying. Grandma's partner.
So I've heard of several. First of all, there's in Irish lore where certain families trace their origin to a fairy, like Anya, and has a child, and then this is the descendants of the Iogon, I believe. So we have that, and then that fairy ancestor keeps watch over future generations in the human's family. So I surely heard of it. there is also the situation where one of the ancestors dies and goes to fairy, and then from there continue to take care of the family and the humans
and the descendants.
and the descendants. Yes, I heard of both.
Okay. All right. Now we were talking about I've got to move this. Okay. We were talking about just a couple of the herbs and trees that you have in your book for attracting fairies. And there's many of them and explanations, so I can't go through them all today. We're going to have to do the marathon Daniela episode. She's got I about to hear it all. So one of the trees that really struck me was the elm tree because it means elven
Mhm.
in the Norse thing, and I find that enchanting. But here in Canada, we lost a lot of our elm trees back in the 1960s to Dutch elm disease. And there are people working towards bringing them back. There are some coming back and cross speciesing them and things to make them stronger so that such a thing doesn't happen again. In the world of offerings, yes, you can pour milk or have honey or whatever. But would that kind of work be considered an offering too, or to work in nature?
Absolutely. So anything that would contribute to restoring the natural habitat, because as I said earlier, not every single fairy being is a nature spirit, but there is a crossover there as well. Some nature spirits or guardians of places or related to different types of plants, they are also fairies in their own way. So everything that we do toward preservation of natural habitat, that is going to be pleasing to some type of fairy, to some class of fairy. And restoring elven elm, that in my opinion can only be pleasing and well received by those among fairies who identify themselves as elves. And I wouldn't put it past the realm of possibility somebody who really works intensively in this reviving, rehabilitation, conservation program to actually start being contacted and tugged at their sleeve, like, hey, thank you very much for doing this. Do you want to further this partnership and do some cool stuff together? Because yeah, you see, we have shared values here, so this is something that happened.
Well, and when we talk about things disappearing, the fairies or the elves disappearing for a while, could something I'm adding this, she has no I
Mhm.
just thought of it. Could
Mhm.
something like the trees disappearing bring down the number of elves in your area and that maybe we may see more of them should they come back?
Oh, this is a really very nuanced question. So first, there is the opinion that elves and fairies and the like beings are only to be found in super wild places untouched by human beings, which is not true, because we can find fairies in the urban environment and habitat. You can connect with fairy like beings in parks and in your own backyard, and so they adapt. But there is a historical record of fairies being pushed away either by the destruction of what was once their habitat or by the new religion taking over and people priests sprinkling holy water over certain rocks, and then these beings, the elves, that's specific Icelandic, moving farther away and taking with them the prosperity of the land or the farm, by the way, so that living wasn't inconsequential. So they shrunk, they went farther and farther away, but as we can see, and several people experience this today, they're pushing to come back. And they're pushing to come back. I believe this finding partnerships with humans who care about the same thing they also care, this shared values, um, so facilitates their coming back. So they're gone but not really gone. Some of them adapt and they disappear from where the forest was cut out, but then they appear in the park that was built, I don't know, 2 miles away from that place. So they adapt, or some of them retract and then push to make a comeback.
So either or, they will find a way to survive,
Oh yeah.
and and find us if we're helping them.
Hmm.
Um, okay. A ZZ plant? Of all the plants, someone gifted me a ZZ plant for good luck. Do you know if this sturdy plant is one that attracts fairies?
I do not know, so I'm not familiar with the ZZ plant. I might recognize it if I see it, but by the name, honestly, I cannot say anything about it. Um, but there are plants, and by the way, I meant to say this earlier. Depending on the culture that we're talking about, fairies would respond differently to different plants. For example, in Ireland, the She are strongly averse to St. John's wort. So I know from several people, including natives of Ireland, that the She do not want these people to use St. John's wort, burn it, or whatever, in conjunction with fairy practices, fairy related practices. In Romania, if I'm to work with Romanian fairies, I do not have the same problem. So now, depending whom do I seek to invite in my personal space, the Irish She or the Romanian fairies, I either find something that's the happy medium, something that's gonna make them both happy, or it's one or the other. Same in Icelandic, St. John's wort, which I prefer to call Suna wort as related to the sun. It's not offensive to the elves. So it depends on whom do you seek to connect to. So if ZZ plant, you have an affinity for a specific type of fairies, you have to research the ZZ as it relates to that group of fairies. I cannot make, or I wouldn't make, blanket statements, oh, ZZ fairy, everybody loves it, because there are very few herbs that actually, like rose petals, I haven't found anybody yet among fairy beings to be averse to rose petals. But again, I don't work with every single kind of fairy beings.
So just look up the ZZ plant, and which is
Where does it grow? It's native from where? Where does it grow? What preference does it have? Is it more sunny? Is it more shady? And try to, and best way, talk directly to your own fairy ally.
And
So
do they have? I Zora is from Pakistan, and I've quite often wanted to ask her if there are fairy tales and things from there that
yes,
we that's an entire, because there's always that language difference that makes it a little more
yes. Oh,
difficult to.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure that in Pakistan there are. I mean, I'm not aware of any human culture that doesn't have fairy-like beings. Or beings that we could call fairies and place them under the umbrella. So I would suggest, Zora, that you look into what is the local folklore and see what beings fit or are alike to the fairies as we understand. I mean, I can talk about European fairies because that's what I grew up with. That's where my expertise, learning curve happens. But check what is local for you. What is the lore? What are the phenomena? What are the encounters? What do people have to say? And then see what connections can you find in between the ZZ, the specific plant. I like the name of it. I mean, ZZ.
Well,
I love
that's her
saying
I was
it.
gonna say
It's
that's
so
her nickname.
melodious. It's so melodious. I mean, I love that plant even before seeing it.
It is her nickname. That's what she tells you to call her, because amazing enough, Azora, I'm still not sure if I have it right. Can be difficult to say without, so ZZ is her nickname. And yes, I've had a money plant. It didn't work in my situation. No, money plants are supposed to bring good luck. Now, Robin was wondering, what would be some general fairy herbs used? Are there
Good
some
question.
herbs that are stronger than others?
Absolutely. So what I found out to work. So first of all, specifically, do you need something apotropic, something to keep them away? Because by the way, there are not all fairies act very friendly. And for example, in my case, when I told my grandmother first what happened, it's a whole incident, and she went like, oh, literally. And the first thing that she thought was to protect me. So the first thing that she hung onto my neck was something apotropic to keep fairies generally, until we get to the details, let's keep everyone away. And so she used something like that, and then went into something that would be more like a filter type of herb that would keep away what is inimical, but also allow close to me what is friendly, what is good, what holds good will, not ill will toward me. So lavender, it grows, it used to be more Mediterranean, but with changing climate, lavender is now growing even in farther western areas of Europe. So local fairies seem to react in specific ways to it. It keeps away everything that's negative. So it has a reputation for keeping away negative weather energies or negative beings, but it will not push away those who come in with goodwill and good intent.
Oh, so it's the perfect.
It's yeah, and there are several like lavender. For example, rosemary, from my experience, works the same. Juniper, whether oil or the leaves, dry juniper leaves or berries that you can actually use as kitchen ingredients. So that juniper, burn it as an incense, as if you burn an incense. Sage, depending on the area. In Romania, I grew up with sage that it's not the same as the white sage here in North America, so I know that has this kind of cleansing quality without really being aggressive toward my own allies. And then if you use exotic ingredients such as frankincense, check in with your allies, see how they take it, because not everybody likes it. Or mugwort, same. A lot of beings do not like mugwort. So last thing you want, bottom line, last thing that you want is to send your friends packing and open the gates for the other crowds that you do not want, to come in.
No, it's a complicated balance.
This is why this is how this came about, because for years I was driving myself nuts to piecemeal information. I want this ritual, and I work with fairies from this culture and from this culture, but I'm actually in this land from here. How am I going to reconcile everything? Because I know from my experience that mistakes can be costly, and I'm done with making major mistakes. So or I think I'm done. So this is, they say, write the book you wish to have.
Oh, you've made some.
This is it. This is it. I mean, it's
the book that you needed.
It was, yeah. So now this lives on my desk, and of course, I mean, I'm looking forward toward the second edition that I will expand, because there's more to add.
Are you making a second edition?
I'm planning, sometimes in the future, because I would like to expand it.
What are you working on now?
On several things. So Pagan Dawn asked me, I hope it's just not jumping the gun, but Pagan Dawn asked me to write something for an anthology. They're putting it together, and I'm creating something that's about very practical magic, and I'll leave it at that. So it's a project for Pagan Dawn. I'm working on another book, another sort of comparative study, same as I've done with Romanian fairies and Irish She. This is going to be Romanian fairies and Scandinavian. Or probably I'll focus more specifically on Icelandic, because Scandinavian, again, is vast. And I want a short book. I don't want a whole treatise. So...
Well, this is why I like the pagan portals. Because if you're looking for instant information, they're like this, and they're very direct, and all the references are there so that you can go to more. I don't have a hard copy of Fairy Herbs. Show your hard copy on Fairy Herbs.
I would love to show
Inside.
yeah.
So inside, everything is listed like a recipe book.
Oh, so yeah, you have it's like structure and chapters, and you have fairies and fairy partnerships and everything there is to know about. And then fairy herbs, you have what qualities, what qualifies a fairy herb as a fairy herb. Why would
it's short
everything?
And it's sweet and it's a quick reference. You can just pick it up, and then there are other references like videos. There's a video in there I want to watch.
Yes. Oh.
And where to find the video.
You'll see a fairy seer in action, like it's a documentary, and it's 2018. So this is not like from the day. No, it's current.
I'm so glad, because I was reading the book and I'm like, do I keep reading the book or do I go watch the video? And I was like, no, focus, Vicky, read the book. And then at the end of the book,
watch the video.
Exact link to the video was there. Yes. And I'm like, I am being rewarded for focusing on the book. So this is why pagan portal books and things like this I think are so fantastic, because if you're dealing with an immediate fairy situation, you do not have time to go googling. And it's right there. And so your your elven fairy one will be much the same kind of deal. It's where we started with this.
Since the first book was very well received, the one parallels between Irish and Romanian fairy lore, that was so well received, and I would like to maintain the same format, kind of putting them into categories, or for as much as you can categorize things about fairies, like what do they like, what's their attitude towards sports, what kind of human interactions do we have in one culture and the other? What are typical offerings? Magic. What type of magical practices are they been participating in?
And it's very respectful to them. I would think they're getting tired of just being called fairies.
That's something that I'm trying to do, to raise awareness and respect, because that's so much on the internet, and some of it is of value, but a lot of it is not, because it's just people. I like personal interpretations and gnosis that's acquired through direct experience. I think that is invaluable, but it's different when you talk, hey, this is my personal experience, and it's a different thing going, this is so, and it's the truth because I experienced it like that.
No, see, this is the complexity of the entire thing. It's like, you like to have some boundaries that have been studied or concrete to the certain things, so that people aren't just like, well, I've decided this is what fairy is, as without any folklore background or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But you can't dismiss personal experiences, because this is an ongoing, growing thing. And like I was talking to Morgan last week, like, could they still be connecting to us? Could they be connecting to us through our computers? Like, this is always growing and always. So the folklore will go on forever in our understanding. But I think this is good work. Now, down to serious business, because I don't even know where the last 60 minutes just went. Are you free two Thursdays from now?
Yes, I'm free 2 Thursdays from now. And for you, I will free my Thursdays at any given moment.
For me, you will come back?
Yes.
Okay, so September 5th.
I love it.
September 5th. We will have Daniela back. Before then, Sarah, I would like to get some more information on the seeds plant. So,
me too.
So, not that you're not already busy, but
I will research. I will research absolutely, because now I'm curious. I'm very curious about this seed plant.
That's it. And Robin, we'll have more plants and things for you, and we'll go through the other half of the questions that we have. So, thank you so much.
You're all very welcome. Thank you to our lovely audience. I mean, I love getting questions and even things that I don't know. This is how I learn, and I'm getting prompted. Hey, you have to research this and that.
Well,
so I love it.
We're learning about each other and different belief systems, and it's wonderful. It's the perfect hour. It was the perfect hour. So I will talk to you soon. We'll work this out. and,
Sure.
and you take care. Okay. Always a pleasure, Daniela. Thank you so much.
Thank you so, so much. See you on the 5th.
Okay. Bye bye. Okay. And next week, we'll be welcoming. Okay. How did that happen? All right. So I'm just going to make a happy face because I can't see the screen right now. Next week, we'll be welcoming Michelle DeRoche from The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. So from The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano from right here on United Public Radio, and Wayne Mellows, the author of Vampire Tales. And our topic is going to be vampires. So I'm not sure all the places we're going with vampires, but we're having a month of Romanian influence here. So we're going to be talking vampires, and it's going to be a lot of fun because I know with these two people, it's going to be informative and fun and just a great time. So be sure to show up. Cece, it's Cece. Thank you, and we will talk to you soon. And I'm just going to close the comments. So until next week, may your coffee be hot and your story sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone.